You have to be there, you have to protest, you have to raise hell, you have to push yourself, you have to defend freedom of expression, each person's individual rights. Independent supporters, Catalans, Basques, and Galicians have always prevented us from being free, looking for any excuse to achieve their goals, which are not about independence, but about money, about expression.
There was a very serious incident that almost caused another blackout, and it was avoided by disconnecting the major industries from the electricity supply, right? In order to, meet that huge demand for electricity.
Judge Fiuni, who is a symbol of Venezuela, a judge who didn't accept what Chavismo wanted to impose on her. They kidnapped her, they tortured her.
Please.
They destroyed all her genitals from the inside with rape, with long guns. That person still can't speak. That was done in Venezuela. That's why these merciless people, these people must pay for everything they've done. Never forget Venezuela. Never forget world.
I'm seeing what's happening with Ferran Torres, a parallel to what happened with Jenny Hermoso, right? Not so much in the story itself, but in the way a certain political group uses it for their own purposes. And it's always the same ones. From an event, from an achievement, from something that has a major media impact, to leech off it and grab a bit of the spotlight. What they're doing is leeching off the spotlight, the light. It's stealing someone else's light to impose their own darkness. This is what they're doing. Mediocre people who can't achieve anything on their own have to go where others succeed to find some way to get attention. And it's, once again, look, we've seen this rhetoric with feminism and the case of Jenny Hermoso.
The Chinese state has set up its donation systems, which include the following. Dissidents go to prison, and the first thing they do is take a blood sample and a tissue sample, and they put it in a database. And when a compatible buyer appears, they go to that person, put them on an operating table, kill them, remove their organs, sell them for $150,000 to $200,000 and tell the client, don't worry, if your body rejects that organ, we'll get you another one within 24 hours.
They go and get it.
Thank you. Mis seguros sponsors, Castillón Confidencial's editorial.
Welcome. How are you, Confidenciales? Strength, honor, and thank you for staying with us and for making this family grow every day. Thank you also for all the interest in a video we uploaded yesterday with an unprecedented exclusive. How to know who they are, according to the person who told us. One of the best informed people in the scheme because they're part of it. Who are the victims? The real owners of the company plus ultra, supposedly. I invite you to watch that video that we posted yesterday afternoon and you will be surprised. We are putting the pieces together. We've spent 4 years denouncing, pointing out corruption, saying that in many countries there are dictators. But in Spain, they're also disguised as Democrats, of peaceful people as friends. Of the people of Gaza, well, of all the progressive feminist paraphernalia, all fake, that they claim to practice but don't actually do. In exchange, they go with Jessica's and Claudia's to the Parador in Teruel. But you already know that story. What I would like to do today is make a request to all of you. We must not overlook what is happening in Spain. For example, after the victory in the World Cup, and let's not expect the police or the politicians in power to be the ones to solve this. It must be solved by civil society. You are aware enough of what's happening to take a step forward. Look, I mean, for example, this scene you're about to see in Bilbao. A 12-year-old boy puts on the Spain jersey, goes out into the street and has to run so that other kids don't beat him up. Watch. Applause. Look, yes, he takes refuge in a stairwell and pushes on the door asking for help. While people watch him, someone shouts from a distance and records him, but no one approaches. I know maybe I'm asking for too much. I understand that you don't confront a Latin gang carrying machetes, but a group of kids who are capable of beating up another child. For carrying the Spanish flag, of course you have to step in. Even if you get kicked, you have to do it. We're getting a lot of scenes like this. Another one from Bilbao, please. It's much better. I'm freaking out. Stop! Hey, hey! Hey, the ones responsible for this are, first of all, the Basque government. Unable, for example, to welcome the players who participated in the World Championship and were part of the national team. They don't welcome them. Why? Because they're Spanish. Of course, they're Basque, they're Spanish, right? They don't understand this dichotomy. They instill that hatred in other families or in other minors. Sometimes through their parents, through the streets, through social media. There are 1,000 ways. And the result, it's what you've seen. The visceral hatred towards those who are not like me. From there to fascism is just one step. And from there to ETA. Half a step, right? We've already seen that. Things aren't any better in Catalonia. The Parliament of Catalonia, sectarian coup plotting, you already know who's pulling the strings there. Jordi Pujol, a corrupt man and his heirs. The Parliament is not going to pay any tribute to the 8 Catalans from the Spanish national team who won the World Cup. God forbid people be happy. God forbid they find out that even Rufián or Junqueras have a Spanish ID card hidden away in their wallets. God forbid they find out that we are Spanish. After hundreds of thousands of people in Catalonia took part in watching the World Cup, even though they put up every possible obstacle with terrible mayors like Colboni in Barcelona, after that, they have to deny the majority. They have to deny that they exist. So they'll forget about the World Cup soon. There's a magnificent artist who made a mural on the streets of Gracia. His name is TV Boy. They're looking at the mural he made of Ferran Torres, the Catalan and therefore Spaniard who scored the winning goal. Well, to the right are the cowards who immediately painted graffiti insulting Spain, so that no one remembers that the World Cup victory was thanks to a Catalan and therefore a Spaniard. Look, Ferran Torres had depression and he even talked about it, and he admitted it. And that helps a lot of other people with psychiatric and psychological problems to lift their heads up. When someone is in a dark place, and Ferran was, they helped him get out of there. His example can help thousands of people get out of there. Instead of focusing on the good things that the great Ferran Torres has, they resort to sectarianism. They are going to single out the enemy like the Gestapo did. They are not only intolerant fascists, they are also cowards. Most of them are always with the hood, always with the ski mask, always hoping they don't get caught in case they have to pay for the mural or clean a wall. The Archena has orders that when there are confrontations over similar incidents like carrying the Spanish flag, etc., they should look the other way. In fact, they are not allowed to act right away. The Basque police unions have complained that they are being held back. They tell them, wait, and when they arrive, whoever it is has already been beaten up. It's a plan. The same one that made the Provincial Council of Alava forbid children at a camp from watching the World Cup final. Yes, the Provincial Council of Alava. Why? Because they said that wasn't among the camp's activities. If it had been a match involving the Basque team, right, they definitely would have watched it. Punishing kids who wore Spain jerseys by not letting them watch the World Cup is possibly the cruelest thing of everything I'm telling you. But trust me, don't expect the Archena or the Mossos to get you out of trouble. Don't expect the politicians from the party to make laws. And to prevent this from happening, it has to be civil society that takes action. Every time you see an attack like this, a protest similar to the ones we've shown, every time a mural is destroyed, of a piece of urban art like the one by Ferran, Torres, and TB Bay, you have to be there, you have to speak out, you have to raise hell, you have to push yourself, you have to push, you have to defend freedom of expression. Each person's individual right. Catalan, Basque, and Galician separatists have always prevented us from being free, looking for any excuse to achieve their goals, which are not about independence, but about money. Since separatism started gaining traction in Catalonia 100 years ago, how many rich people has it created, right? Gentlemen, we need to open our eyes. This concerns all of us. We're in the 21st century. Enough with the sectarian provincialism of a few who are just a handful and don't represent the majority. The majority needs to say enough. This is everyone's business so that what we've seen doesn't happen again. Welcome, we investigate.
The Miss Seguros app has sponsored the Castillon Confidential editorial. Download Miss Seguros, the easiest and fastest way to manage all your insurance in one place.
When you ride an electric scooter, the last thing you want is to be carrying papers. Your insurance, always at hand, digital, organized, and ready when you need it.
Thank you. Thank you for the video.
Castillon Confidencial by Albert Castillon.
Ladies and gentlemen, there is an almost constant threat of new nationwide power blackouts across Spain. We suffered more than a year ago the worst blackout in the history of Spain and Europe, and we are at risk of experiencing it again at any moment. We have received a message from Santos, one of our confidenciales, who asks a question.
It seems to me, and you might be able to investigate it better than I can, that this past Wednesday, while the Argentina-England match was being played, we were just on the brink from another blackout in Spain, another total power outage. This time it seems they reacted in time and cut off the supply to all the big companies.
Yes, my friend. Just a few days ago, last Wednesday, we were about to suffer another major blackout in Spain, although it was only published in small print and in a few media outlets. Gabriel Araujo, how are you, dear friend?
How are you? Greetings to all the Confidenciales, Albert. Thanks.
This is a scandal. We were once again about to be left in the dark.
Yes, that's right. Last Wednesday, when all of Spain was watching that match between Argentina and England to see who would be the rival in the World Cup final, well, there was a very serious incident that almost caused another blackout, and it was avoided by disconnecting the big industries from the electricity supply, right? In order to, well, meet that huge demand for electricity. So we were very close, just as you said.
Right? Thank you. What's the reason? The heat waves, the air conditioners, the power grid that can't do its job. Which one is it?
The last one, without a doubt. We are really at the mercy of Beatriz Corredor's improvisation, a socialist minister, but she doesn't have any technical knowledge. And of course, we are at the mercy of electricity market speculators and improvisation. So everything is improvised, and since everything is improvised, it's done badly. And this kind of thing happens a lot because this is the second time in 2 months, Albert. This is really something that's happening far too often. And it's the second time in 2 months, and only thanks to the industry being willing to disconnect. I mean, the big industry, the major energy consumers say, fine, we'll shut down. Cut us off so that the population can have electricity. And only for that reason, we haven't suffered that blackout, right?
The Great Blackout caused losses of more than 4 billion euros. We're at risk of this happening again. Beatriz Corredor keeps earning 546,000 a year. That's almost 50,000 a month for doing such a bad job. But since she's a friend of Sanchez, they won't lay a finger on her. I think she just follows orders, right? The last time we had the big blackout, which we all remember, I'm convinced she got the order from Sanchez because all the top leaders were gathered with the king in Madrid to say we're going to be the first country in the world that relies only on clean energy. And with that adventure, we were left in the dark. They're capable of doing it again.
Yes, because it's also very clear that the blackouts are caused precisely by asynchronous power, which is what provides all the sustainable energy from photovoltaic panels and wind turbines, which we're seeing is not a guarantee. But since it's on the agenda, also, it's not only designed for this to be the main source of energy, but huge amounts of money are also being moved around. You also have to understand that behind all renewable energy, there's a mafia and a big industry that's benefiting and making a lot of money from this issue. And indeed, as Beatriz Corredor rightly says, it's the tip of the iceberg in this case that makes it possible for this whole business to be so booming. But of course, with the danger caused by these blackouts, which have also resulted in deaths, all these improvisations cause deaths. Spaniards died in that blackout, and this is really something for which no solution has been put on the table, right?
Has this happened in another European country?
At no time, no, not at all. There are contingency and incident response plans. They are absolutely prepared for this. Of course, nuclear energy is supporting and injecting that synchronous power, which is what is needed to guarantee the electricity supply. And this in Spain, since the agenda is to attack everything related to nuclear energy, well, that's why we're in the situation we're in, right?
It's incredible that because of speculation, the final goal is to make money through wind and solar energy no matter what, the solar panel program. And do you know that Sanchez has been appointed by the UN as co-president of Agenda 2030? That's all we needed.
It's crystal clear. But besides the problem of lack of foresight, the issue is that there hasn't been any investment in infrastructure. Looking at the entire power grid, the distribution network is completely obsolete. There are major industrial plans that can really boost industry and commerce in many areas. And they're on hold because there's no electrical infrastructure, there's no power grid to bring energy to those centers. The problem is that it's grinding to a halt and it's hindering progress, and especially the economic benefit of many areas of Spain, right?
The main thing isn't being done, right? Laying the groundwork so that later the big companies can come in and work. Exactly. Well, if something happens, they'll surely blame it on climate change, right? Yes.
It's always the culprit, obviously. Yes, the climate emergency.
He says, my God, how awful. Well, I know you're leaving for a few days of rest. Take care, get some rest, you deserve it, and we'll keep proving, among other things, this issue and especially the electoral fraud when you come back. Big hug.
Thank you.
Hugs to everyone.
See you soon. Goodbye.
Castillon Confidencial by Albert Castillon.
Castillon, I lost my job and I could only rely on credit cards and loans to get by until I lost my house, I lost my family, and even then I couldn't get rid of my debts.
If you are in a situation of insolvency, contact us and we will tell you if you meet the requirements of the Second Chance Law. Sin Deuda Group, your second chance.
Welcome to the world of Vichy Catalan, where authenticity and health go hand in hand. We know how to have fun and take care of ourselves here. A place to make every moment unique and savor it intensely. See you at Vichy Catalan, the home of sparkling water.
Gentlemen, do you know that in Paracuelos, very close to Madrid, I've been there, there's a cemetery on the side of a mountain where 6,000 people who were murdered are buried. If any of you arrive at Madrid Barajas Airport in Madrid, which I'm sure many of you will do now for vacation, you'll see there's a big white cross. On this side of a mountain, that's where the Paracuelos cemetery is. That huge monumental white cross can be seen from kilometers away. Well, based on the historical memory law, many thought that a plaque should also be placed there, that a ceremony should be held, I remember. Some say it's not 6,000, but more than 12,000 are buried there. They were killed by orders of the Socialist Party, the Communist Party, UGT, the so-called Reds. Most of them are priests, entire families. There are minors, there are very young people buried there, murdered there. Well, the government has refused to declare Paracuelos a site of democratic memory because, and I'm quoting, it has no historical relevance. For example, in Paracuelos, the history of practically everyone who is there has been identified. But there's another place, which is the Moncloa Palace, where Sanchez lives, the official residence of the Prime Minister, where there are also 20 graves because 20 people were killed there. But since the red side did it too, they say it doesn't matter. Of the buildings in Madrid, more than 13 had checas, that is, centers of torture and murder, and nobody talks about that either. This historical memory law was created to serve the grandchildren law, to change the voter registry. They couldn't care less about the victims from either side, and on top of that, by poking at old wounds, they trample over what whole families had already left behind. I know families that were estranged because of the civil war, and of course over the years, the children and grandchildren have already forgotten those quarrels. Sanchez is an expert at digging up corpses from their graves. He began with Franco and never stopped, trying to polarize, to turn brother against brother, because from that fight between us, between those of us who don't think the same, but we would never be able to raise a hand in that fight, he comes out winning. Roberto Crobu, dear friend and psychologist, you know exactly what I'm talking about. How are you, my friend? Yes.
Yes, because also one of the places as a foreigner, well, now Spanish, by the way, I have
What a nice shirt for our Argentine friends.
Now.
I'll introduce you now to an Argentine woman who is going to get upset. But anyway.
Go on, as I was saying. Yes, I visited the Valley of the Fallen about a decade ago. It seemed like a place with a certain energy to me. Very strange and odd, and at the same time imposing, right? And they've ruined it with this euphemism of resignification, which is nothing more than applying the indigenous narrative to the history of Spain, that is rewriting the history from a few years ago based on today's values, to gain an advantage, to create a historical grievance in order to later legitimize a whole series of laws that then, under the slogan of compensating someone, what it really does is give privileges, right, to their own people, right?
Yes, but allow me, you haven't been to the cemetery in Paracuelos.
Not in the cemetery. I've been to the Valley of the Fallen. Okay.
But let me ask you this. You come from Italy. The word fascist originated there with Mussolini. Do they call anyone on the right a fascist in Italy like they do here?
No. Well, first of all, Spaniards don't know what fascism is. There was no fascism in Spain. There was Francoism, okay? But the fascist movement is a purely Italian phenomenon which mixes a whole series of elements from Italian culture at that time, with a political structure that conceives of the state as totalitarian. That also existed in Spain, but the Spanish don't have the same Italian culture, the same characteristics. You can't, honestly, it really catches my attention, you know, that here the word fascist is used so lightly, when for us, for Italians, it's a bit like for Argentinians, the loaded word is Nazi. It has an important meaning, you know. You don't use it, you don't abuse it, and you have to be very careful when you talk about it.
It's curious that here it's thrown around like a weapon at the slightest thing. Yeah, well,
But allow me, Albert, allow me. It gets used over and over. That's proof that it's used precisely because there was no fascism here. That's why they use it so lightly. They appropriate an external term because they know they can use it and distort it as they wish.
that's incredible. There's intent behind it. Do me a favor, show me the shirt again and leave it there to see his reaction.
I have two and another here.
One is enough. The white one and the red one. The white one and the red one. Let's see. Get ready. Let's see your face. Azabache in Buenos Aires. How are you, dear?
Hello, my warriors of light, lovers of freedom. Congratulations, champions, congratulations.
What do you think? Thank you very much. Hey, even though your heart is broken because you love Buenos Aires so much, you have to admit that the better team won, right?
Yes, first I want to say that it makes me very happy that two Spanish-speaking teams made it to the final. This is wonderful. Of course, I've been living here in Argentina for 27 years and I've seen the national team grow, its highs and its lows. Hey, how could you not get behind a team that has truly worked so hard? Undoubtedly, Spain was at a high level and they deserved their cup. What can I say? No.
You're fair. But they tell me there's Argentine press, and at the same time that leads public opinion to talk about conspiracy theories. About whether the referee did something, whether the match was bought, about the mysterious comments Messi made to people in the locker room. Come on, I think they should watch the match and see how each team played, right? And that's it.
Yes, well, I imagine it's out of frustration. Here, soccer is a huge passion. I mean, the whole country comes to a standstill here. Here, it's an overwhelming feeling, and of course, they feel that frustration of not having won the cup after making it that far. I always say, wait, we can't underestimate the huge effort it takes to become the runner-up. I mean, to get to that moment, that's an enormous team effort. Honestly, I'm telling you, I've been watching the national team play for many years. There's a team disconnect that I don't know the reason for. I don't believe in these conspiracy theories. No, I think it's a bit of that pain expressed on social media, in my opinion. But here, the winner was clearly Spain, or it was this huge goal. Also, they were good.
In fact, there were 3 and 2 were disallowed. I don't know who would have any reason to complain here.
Well, at the time, sorry. No. Tell me. When it came down to it, there was one thing, Robert, that made Spain...
Psychological warfare. 3, not 1, no, 3. But one thing...
Congratulations.
Yes. And I thank you for that. In Spain, there's been a feeling left that I don't like. First of all, Messi is a gentleman. He made that clear throughout the whole match. Hats off to him. But at the same time, he has teammates who are troublemakers, who went out to hit and who don't know how to lose. And the Argentina national team doesn't deserve players like that wearing their colors. We need to start doing some self-analysis. I say this because if it had been Spain who acted like that, I would say the same thing. I'm not much of a soccer fan and I don't have that passion either. People don't associate that sore loser attitude with Argentina. There's no one who says, gentlemen, we need to improve our game, kick less, and actually play soccer. That kind of self-criticism doesn't exist, you know? Self-criticism, you know?
No, I'm telling you there is. And above all, Messi to me is the best player in the world.
He's a gentleman, a real gentleman.
Besides, he's 39 years old. He's an example of merit, effort, and perseverance. Honestly, he's wonderful. His coaches too. Some players are truly wonderful. What I did see is that, for example, Spain had a really good team overall. It's like having several, I would say, Messis in the making. I don't know how to put it, but it was very well polished, very young too. Here in the Argentine team, we had those strong leaders, but there were also young people who I don't know if they were used to that World Cup and they react and things like that.
The blow was a bit too much. I understand you very well.
It's not good to react that way since it's a sport and should be experienced as such. What is undeniable, and this needs to be put on the table, is that Argentina has been bombarded by attacks against Argentina since before the World Cup. Against Argentina, against Messi, against the national team. All of that has caused... No, it's true. This is true.
Here in Spain, what we have is a lot of indications that FIFA wanted Argentina to win. For example, disallowing a goal for Egypt, that is helping Argentina reach the final. If FIFA wanted anything, it was for Argentina to win so that Messi could say goodbye to football in the grandest way possible. And we had to score 3 goals to prevent it. Don't you see it? Yes.
Yes. No, wait, I see it and I'm going to explain why.
Let's see, the referee. What does the referee say? Are you the referee, Robert? No?
I need to explain this before the referee speaks. I've discussed this for a long time, even before the World Cup. I'm talking because this has been a huge narrative for many months before the World Cup, where an anti-Argentina narrative has been created. And this is being talked about, and I see it this way, about 21st century socialism. I'm not bringing sports into this. I'm saying that Javier Milei being aligned with the free world is under bombardment. For a while now, I'm telling you, anti-Millet, anti-Argentina, anti-Messi, a lot of things that have been snowballing. That's what I mean. When we get into the issue of territory, sports are a different matter. Yes.
Red card or yellow card, referee?
Look, I recommend you watch the Confederations Cup final from 2005 between Argentina and Brazil. 4-1 for Brazil. How did Argentina play? A repeat of the final. A repeat, kicking dirty tricks there, messing everything up. But look, I had said it before the final. In fact, I have it right here. I'm going to give Zabache a test to see how Argentinian she is. If she has a heart attack watching this, she's Argentinian enough. And if not, she's not.
Let's see. No, I don't see her reacting.
No, Zabache, you're not Argentine enough. Argentines who know, those who have lived it, know very well what this jersey means. The 1990 World Cup in Italy. The all-powerful Argentina of Maradona, who had just beaten Italy on penalties, who carried a mystical aura. They had managed to beat Italy in the stadium where Maradona played, in the stadium in Naples. Just imagine, right? And they came up against a disciplined Germany, playing well with their passes. The same game plan that Spain used. Well, Argentina didn't have any chances. The match was 1-0, also making the game messy, committing fouls, playing like it was a war, psychological battle, and so on. Same ending.
Please, did they lose by 1 goal?
1 goal from penalty.
By penalty. And again, how could it be, since we Argentinians are the best at kicking, shooting?
At least, don't you realize?
Let me say it. Don't you see we Argentinians are needed? Thank you.
That they have lost.
The finals, they play the finals. They always lose them by 1 goal. In Brazil against Germany too, in 2014, they lost 1-0 in overtime. Just like with Spain, same match. In the 1990 final in Italy, they also lost by 1 goal. They reached the finals, and all they want is to get to penalties to see if they get lucky. That's their game plan. It's a historic lineage of Argentine football. All right.
Okay, but wait. I need to defend myself because I'm not reacting. Yes, I need to defend myself. I'm not reacting because at that time I was in Venezuela. In my life, in my artistic life, what I can tell you is that Venezuela isn't in any World Cup. It's never been in any World Cup. And what we Venezuelans do is celebrate, of course, all the Spanish-speaking teams. For us, we've always painted ourselves in Argentina's colors. Whenever Argentina or Brazil played, we would dress up and celebrate. If it's Germany, like that time Germany won, we also painted ourselves in Germany's colors and went out to celebrate because we didn't have that ourselves. At that time, I was living in Venezuela. Now, I do feel Venezuelan, Argentinian, Venezuelan. I love this country, yes.
If instead of reaching the final, it had been England versus Argentina and Spain was already eliminated, all the Spaniards would be supporting Argentina. For the same reason you're talking about and not with England.
Except me, except you.
You're really weird, yeah, but hey.
No, not Argentina. It's don't come back.
It's not Huelvas.
Argentina is not Nicaragua.
Look, Robert, you need a psychologist, even if you are one, but we'll talk about that another day. Well, friends, it's good to talk about these things, but I have some concerned listeners with opinions. I want you to listen to Guerrero. Listen.
And this one, what do you think? Daniel Ortega, who says there won't be any more elections. What's the point now? He's not leaving. The dictatorship of the proletariat, which is the goal of the communists to establish the dictatorship of the proletariat.
The dictator Daniel Ortega, unfortunately president of Nicaragua. Listen.
There will be no more elections. There will be elections again. So that they try to seize the government, seize power. No, they've been conspiring there, conspiring, organizing, looking for ways to organize parties. For what? In an election that they assume. So let those parties win the elections. And that's the end of the story here. That the parties put in place by the Yankees, put in place by the Somoza loyalists,
will return to power. Never. 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 It's funny he says that because the Yankees, as he calls them, supported the Sandinistas to get rid of Somoza as soon as they came to power. And the Yankees are always with the one they put in power. Fidel Castro was put in power by the Yankees and they still can't get rid of the Castristas. Wait, Castristas.
And Delcy Rodriguez was also put in power by them. They put her there.
Yes, it's true. The thing is, Ortega is decrepit. It's sad to see him and his wife. This is all that's left, right? For him to say publicly there will be no more elections. There's no turning back from this. They used to tell me, but now I say it more cautiously, that after Cuba and Venezuela, Donald Trump was looking at Nicaragua. But after seeing Sabache, my hopes kind of faded, right?
Yes, the thing is, I see Nicaragua, Cuba, and Venezuela as one axis here, and they function the same way. They already realize that the whole election thing can't go on because the world already knows it's a lie. The elections in Venezuela are a lie.
In Cuba, they used to manipulate them until now. Now they don't even call for them anymore.
That's why they've completely taken off the mask and now they say it out loud. These are criminals. Look, yesterday I did a live stream about this because who really gets these criminals out? Because one thing, look at what they were telling me about the United States, that it installed Castro, let's put it that way, but the United States put Castro and helped Castro to supposedly remove a dictatorship so that Cuba would be free. What happened is that Castro was a total deception. Just like Chavez was a total fraud, presenting himself as democratic.
So did the United States also help Chavez?
No, Cuba helped him, Russia helped him, all these people from the axis of evil. From the Sao Paulo Forum, they promoted 21st century socialism throughout our region because their project is to turn our region into communal states like the former USSR, called the Patria Grande.
So the Sao Paulo Forum, later called the Puebla Group, which is the same thing, and Zapatero was already involved there, right?
Exactly. So the thing with this is, who is going to get these criminals out? Because the world, with its useless bureaucracy and its useless diplomacy, allows these kinds of people to settle in and control countries. They subjugate the population by violating their three basic rights: life, liberty, and property. What do you do with these people if international organizations do nothing, if they don't work? Created by the left, financed by non-democratic regimes, and with allies among tyrannies, autocracies, and dictatorships. How do we in the free world, how do we as citizens get these people out? There's no justice out there. And allow me, I'll close with this: Trump, whether people like him or not, is the only one taking action. Will it be enough? I don't know. But he has laid the first brick of this shield for the Americas precisely to confront these miserable criminals. But he doesn't have the support of the world.
Well, we should have a plane like Air Force One that goes around extracting dictators, right? Now, Raul Castro, now Daniel Ortega, right, Robert? There are several. There was a time when the United States was the guarantor of freedom in much of the world.
Of course, but what has happened? That the Socialist International has invented the excuse of international law to cover up its own corruption. I believe that the free world and true democracy, the real rule of law, face a great challenge. From now on, it's already on the table, and I think they're facing it. And that is to have mechanisms for the people to have agile mechanisms to change governments and dictators quickly. Because unfortunately, as Zabache said, these people take advantage of the fact that justice works in such a bureaucratic and slow way. Meanwhile, they plunder, accumulate power, and secure themselves. A place where they can escape, and when the time comes, well, they leave. Then there are those who cling to power so much that their power practically blinds them, like Maduro. By the way, today he appears before the judge yesterday he appeared before the judge in New York. And they cling to power and don't see that they're in danger of being captured. But the vast majority build such a bureaucratic system that in the end they use it as a shield for their own corruption.
Yes, Maduro appeared yesterday before the criminal court that accuses him of drug trafficking and wants to sentence him and Celia Flores to life imprisonment. They pleaded not guilty, as you know. It was a preliminary hearing, which is interesting because the lawyer, poor man, tried to request the release of both of them by saying that what the United States Army had done was a military abduction. Of course, the judge didn't even look him in the face, but the trial hasn't started yet. These are preliminary hearings ahead of whatever the judge decides, because they keep telling me that the Brooklyn jail is terrible and that they are more than willing to cooperate, to testify, to help, whatever it takes so that their sentence is reduced and they can get out. Maduro is 63 years old, Celia is 69. They don't have much time to waste, right, Asabache?
No, but as far as I'm concerned, let them rot in jail. We have to do everything in our power to make sure these people rot in jail. No mercy. Look, I'm asking for it and I'm taking advantage of your platform to ask for it. All reports of crimes against humanity, extrajudicial executions, and human rights violations must accompany the complaint filed by the United States because these people can't get away anymore. Chavismo, from my point of view, shouldn't exist. It should be eradicated from the face of the earth, just like what was done with Nazism and with ideologies that go against the citizens. Here we see how the Czech Republic is pushing laws against communism, against socialism. They don't want to see it anymore, and I don't know why. We still have to deal around the world with an ideology of hunger, misery, death, and decay.
And why has Sir Rodriguez given immunity to the United States? Judicial immunity. They say that as long as he remains in power, he won't be judged for anything.
I think, and this is just my opinion, that here they are using the structure as a strategy. And well, they know their strategy. They must be specialists to dismantle this from the inside. I don't know if that's going to work out because for me, these people need to be removed completely. Sorry for being so frank, but they need to be removed. That criminal organization needs to be dismantled because what's at stake is not just Venezuela, it's the whole world. As long as the epicenter of organized crime is still there, we are all going to be at risk of losing our democracy and our freedom because these people finance other countries through drug trafficking and terrorism to implement the same model. Here we're talking about something that can't be separated and it needs to be said clearly. So please allow me, and I'll finish with this. Holding elections under a criminal tyranny, a structure that has taken an entire country hostage, is giving legitimacy to a political organization. You can't give them legitimacy because they're not politicians, they're criminals who took power. Do you understand what I mean?
Absolutely, and we all agree. How could you be against that? Well, speaking of criminals or alleged criminals, this woman you see is Sofia Puente, the sister of Oscar Puente. It's the big news of the last few hours. A court number 35 in Madrid has opened proceedings against her for possible malfeasance in office. She took the grandchildren law, changed the text, and allowed anyone, regardless of whether they were the grandchild of a Civil War exile. But anyone, even if it was from the last century or the one before, could obtain Spanish citizenship. It's a major step because no one believes that Sofia Puente did this of her own free will. She did it under orders. Orders from Sanchez, no doubt about it, right, Robert?
Yes, look, we have to consider where Sofia Puente was, the sister of the butcher of Andamio, of Adamus. I call him that now. You see, right? How few people actually gain power. In the end, they're siblings. These could easily be the Rodriguez siblings from Venezuela if Sanchismo were to go further, right? She actually held a very senior, very important position within Perez Bolaño's ministry. And when it comes to implementing the law passed by the Congress of Deputies and the Senate, well, to translate it into an internal regulation, she distorted a whole series of terms precisely to allow many more people to apply for citizenship. It seems that there is a heading, there is one in the questionnaires. To apply for Spanish citizenship, it says, of course, the person has to check the reason, that is the motive for which they are applying for citizenship, right? Well, for being the grandchild of, because my parents left during that time, it has to have been between one period and another during the Franco era. And then it seems that thanks to that change in the regulation, an option was added that said other reasons. And of course,
Other reasons, let's see.
anything, right?
Other reasons. I feel like being Spanish. And since they're handing out Spanish passports like they come in boxes of Crispies, you get one for free. Also, that later they can be on the voter rolls and someone can manipulate the vote, because they don't expect them to vote for PSOE. It's already set up so that someone can put the vote inside the envelope. Census. The thing about Sofia Puente is great news. We've been pushing against electoral fraud here for 4 years. Let's listen to Sixto.
Why doesn't any judge act on their own against the so-called grandchildren law? A judge can act on their own perfectly well without anyone ordering them to.
He's right, but in Spain that almost never works because they would need the support of the public prosecutor's office. And who does the prosecutor's office depend on? Exactly. This time it was Section 35 of Plaza Castilla, and I'm saying the judge's name, Inmaculada Loba Conconube Ruiz. Miss Inmaculada, get ready. They're going to go after you. They'll put your photo on La Sexta, and the people from Channel 1 will threaten you in the street with cameras. They'll look for dirt on you or your family wherever they can, just like they've done with Peinado or Judge Viedma. Get ready, Miss Inmaculada, because you'll have to prove your courage and you'll pay a high price for it. That's what happens when you go up against the mafia. They did this in Venezuela, here too. They targeted judges, remember, right?
Look, I'll give you an example. Judge Fiuni, who was a symbol, is a symbol of Venezuela. A judge who didn't accept what Chavismo wanted to impose on her. They kidnapped her, they tortured her.
Please.
They blew apart her genitals from the inside with rounds from long guns. That person still can't speak. That was done in Venezuela. That's why I say these merciless people, these people must pay for everything they've done. Never forget Venezuela, world, never forget. And look at yourselves in Venezuela's mirror, because Pedro Sanchez is heading there. Here you are facing a monster and citizens have to get involved. And I ask you, Albert, and I ask you, Robert, would it have any implication or lead to anything if all the citizens challenge the grandchildren law, at the same time, if all Spanish citizens submit their rejection of it? What implication would it have? Would it have any effect?
They've already done it. There are many lawsuits, right, Robert? There are tons. Everyone has challenged the grandchildren law. PP, Vox, Justice, Europe. There are a lot of people.
Yes, yes. But what Azabachi says, I think it connects with what I was saying before, right? There should be more streamlined mechanisms so that citizens can fight the state on their own more easily. They shield themselves with power, and just look at the private prosecutions, the effort they have to make to present, to show up in court. I think that in the case of Begoña Gomez, they had to post a bond. I think it was 10,000 euros in order to be a private prosecutor, right? And these are associations, but the average citizen who could also file a complaint is clearly completely unprotected.
Look, I'm asking you about this. We have submitted reports to the International Criminal Court, reports from Human Rights Watch, OAS report, Almagro report, Bachelet report, huge reports about what this criminal tyranny has done. Nothing has happened. The International Criminal Court should already be bringing charges against Narcolas Masburo and his wife for all of this, but it doesn't. Yes, I know that recently, I don't know if it was, I don't want to make a mistake, forgive me for the number or the circumstance, I don't remember. I think there were 5 direct complaints from citizens against Narcolas Masburo in New York. So here we see that the organization in charge, the one that should be doing it, isn't doing it, but citizens themselves can file their complaints directly so that these people don't get away with it. This is what worries me, you know?
I understand you. Spain, gentlemen, don't tell this in Buenos Aires. See, Azabache, what we're about to say now, you disconnect, you stay here, but please don't explain it in Argentina. Okay, do me that favor. In Spain, there are many who, for celebrating the victory, get beaten, insulted, and spat on. Spaniards against Spaniards. And especially against Ferran Torres, who scored the 3rd goal, the one the referee allowed. And all because of this cap he wore, as you can see, on the day of the victory, the day after, during the celebration. Make Spain great again. Donald Trump's MAGA replaced the United States with Spain, which would be a bit like national priority. Well, look at the backlash he's gotten. No one in the Parliament of Catalonia wants to pay tribute to him in his homeland. He doesn't want to be received. No one wants to receive him in Catalonia because, of course, with what he said, it seems like he's from Vox. That's all we needed. What a shame. Well, Pedro tells us even more. Listen.
These SOBs from Sumar are messing with Ferran Torres. All they do is confirm that socialism and communism are ideologies born from envy, that use hypocrisy and violence to impose themselves. Being a socialist means having little and giving a lot. Disgusting.
Y dar mucho asco. Well, I'm with you. I want you to hear what Pedro means. The one you're going to hear is Alberto Ibanez. He's the spokesperson for housing in Sumar. Listen.
In 2010, a whole apartment in Valencia cost an average of 500 euros. Today, in Valencia, a room in a shared apartment already costs 550 euros. That's why it's essential to take bold measures like, for example, bringing back our law to prevent companies and vulture funds like 11 Future Invest, the company of Ferran Torres, which according to Forbes already owns 20 properties in Valencia, from being able to buy.
Apartment. In other words, since he's now in the spotlight, he's a speculator because he makes money by buying apartments. Let's really target him, see if we can bring him down a bit. Ferran Torres went through a deep depression, as I mentioned at the beginning. He was in treatment. He should be the symbol that you can get out of this, that you can overcome depression just like he did. Instead of that, Robert, they single him out so that he falls again.
Yes. And also, look, I see what's happening with Ferran Torres as a parallel to what happened with Jenny Hermoso, right? Not so much in the story itself, but in the instrumental use that a certain political group makes of it. And it's always the same ones. Of a fact, of an achievement, of something that has a major media impact, to mention it and take a bit of the spotlight. What they're doing is stealing someone else's light to impose their own darkness. This is what they're doing. Mediocre people who aren't able to achieve something on their own have to go where others succeed to find some way to gain the spotlight. And it's the same thing once again. Look, we've seen this rhetoric with feminism, the case of Jenny Hermoso. We've seen it with the issue of non-normative bodies, right? No, 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 now it's about imposing quotas wherever so that those who don't achieve things for being smarter, better equipped, having more talent, or being more physically outstanding, they can have the privileges. Of those who, however, through effort, perseverance, motivation, and truly competitive character actually achieve. And once again, it's the triumph of mediocrity and envy, as this outlet said, right? Above talent and merit, it's terrible.
By the way, what's really shocking is that those people, the ones you've praised, the ones you've given good reviews to, we are the ones who pay their salaries. They're public officials. And instead of lifting up those who succeed through hard work, they bring them down because they're not part of their group. Maybe ideologically, he's really extreme. That's objectifying the person. You no longer see him as a soccer player. You see him as a rich guy who's just speculating. No, that's not right. Well,
that's exactly what I was referring to at the beginning of the show, because here, among Argentinians themselves, the Kirchnerist Chavistas from the far left have been throwing dirt at Messi and the national team for a while now. They didn't want Argentina to win. The same people, the same Argentinians. That's why this is a campaign. It's happening again in Spain. This is not a coincidence. This is a political propaganda script. Who knows what money is funding this around the world, wherever this is being repeated? To take away the spotlight, as Robert says. Here, if you take away the spotlight, credit, and effort, everything else is just manure in the dark. That's why these people worship violence, lies, laziness, and have those mental parasites in their heads. Envy, resentment, hatred. And this is what they show every time they have a microphone in front of them or use their social media for that.
and there's a controversy. We've been here for 3 days, and I think today we'll close it with what Hector has told me. We were debating whether the Spanish national anthem should have lyrics or not, because we don't like the low part. And it's also true when we see, for example, the Argentinians singing their anthem at the final. Well, it's very beautiful, isn't it? We can make emotional faces, but that's as far as we go. There's controversy. Some people think no, and some people think yes. And Hector is going to settle this controversy today, I think, with his comment. And it has to do with Argentina. Zabache. Hello, listen to him.
Many years ago in Argentina, they tried to put lyrics to the anthem, and what they did was an absolute failure. Everyone had an idealized voice for Mafalda, so nobody liked at all the sound they heard when someone else gave Mafalda a voice.
Interesting. Thank you, Hector. Very smart. I mean, you can't put words to something that everyone identifies with or feels in a different way. Just like you can't give Mafalda a voice, you have to read her. And you imagine the voice yourself. Maybe that's the secret, right, Zabache?
Absolutely. There are many characters like that. Let me mention the Pink Panther. Do you remember? I'm not sure if you watched it. It was all silent and everyone imagined it in their own way and their imagination ran wild. When they gave it a voice, it was such a disappointment. Everyone, I mean, there are characters like Mafalda, like the Pink Panther, and others where that silence is better. It's magical. It's magical. From my point of view, I don't want to get into that. No.
Robert, do you feel the same way in Murcia?
No. I think they are just an expression of the difficulty of conceiving Spain as a nation whole, okay? Well, of course, you ask yourself, first, either the anthem exists as a historical legacy or creating one now is going to be very difficult. It's going to feel like something artificial, right? Something that's very fake.
Well, there was already some lyrics, but since Peman wrote them during Franco's era, they've buried them too, because everything that was done here in those 40 years has been buried, right?
Yes. But in any case, it's true that it feels like it's not enough. The anthem without lyrics, I say this because in Italy, we had for a few years in the 90s a big controversy with the national anthem because the athletes didn't sing it. They didn't sing it, they didn't feel it was their own. And with education, in the end, we made it. Now everyone sings it. There's a feeling, and expressing the anthem in words is beautiful, right?
Well, but I want to add something so that what I'm saying is understood. I have never referred to the anthem. I know they're talking about the anthem and they're taking it in that direction. I'm talking about the characters. The anthem is something else. I couldn't even give an opinion about today's anthem.
I'm not sure about it. No, I couldn't. I would like it to have lyrics, but I agree with Robert that right now it would feel very forced, and this needs to have some tradition and depth. But of course, if we never start, it will never have that either.
Besides, now with how Spanish identity has been distorted over the years by nationalisms, it's very complicated. What do you do? An anthem? And in what language? Does it have to include Catalan? In the end, you're going to make a curry, you have to include Galician. Everyone wants their own version of the national anthem.
It would be the himno and the hymne and la himna. Why not la himna?
The island, but watch out.
Be careful. If Pedro Sanchez is around, he'll use inclusive language. Watch out. We're crazy.
Let's go to the newsroom. Susana Gasc, latest messages.
Here we are, Albert, in the Castellon Confidential newsroom, as always, receiving those messages and opinions. We receive many messages from Venezuela reminding us that they are still there, that they keep fighting, and asking you, please, Albert Castellon, to keep reporting the way you do. Marina also asks why we don't all fight against this government, so that we can be proud of ourselves, because we are doing things right, we are trying to do things right. I speak as a friend, but it's like talking to a wall. There's no protest or anything. Let's please try to organize a national demonstration to get this government out, no matter what it takes. Marta also tells us that when justice becomes law, rebellion becomes a duty. Strength and honor to keep going with this podcast and to keep fighting from the trenches. Also in this case, Maria Gutierrez says, I think Zapatero hasn't been in Spain for weeks, even though they say he's holed up. And you say it too, and we all believe it. Deep down, I think he's out there in the country and abroad, and the international ones. Jose Cruz says they should investigate, that there should be people assigned to investigate, that they should also investigate the accounts and real estate of the high-ranking officials of the tax agency, because they're surely going to discover very interesting things. Jose also says that he sends all his affection and his full support to the service members attacked by that pack of criminals. Andy says that the attack has been, we're talking about the same topic, the attack in that town near Pamplona. The attack was carried out treacherously and by surprise, because those who do it that way are cowards. They must be identified and located above all else, and at the very least they should get what they deserve if we catch them. Rafael says that Sanchez has said something about these cursed people, has offered some thoughts, has made some statement. He is happy. Is he supporting what they've done, or is he criticizing the actions as he should? We'll leave it here, Albert. It's important that you follow us on all social media, on all the channels we have, and above all, that you also follow us and discover the digital newspaper, CasionConfidencial.com. Because the important thing, Albert, is to be well informed. Thank you, Albert.
Thank you very much. And my support for Cuba. I hope to speak with Father Alberto Reyes as soon as possible because Trump has already sent the first shipment of humanitarian aid to Cuba. It is already in Cuba and will be distributed by the Catholic Church. It's the first 18 tons of food and hygiene kits. The plane will at least supply 700 families. That's very few families. And there is a list. The church has made a list of 196,000 who need urgent help. So please let 20 more trucks or more planes come through under those agreements being negotiated between Cuba and the United States. This is a priority, like what's happening in Venezuela and the earthquake. Priority. Then we'll take care of the Castros and treat them the way we treat Maduro, at the very least. Dear Zabache, thank you for being there. A big kiss, and I follow you on your live streams. Thank you.
Yes, sir. At Azabach Online. A kiss to Albert, Robert, and to everyone at Confidencial. Allow me. Venezuela is not alone. Cuba is not alone. We keep raising our voices and we keep doing everything we can. Never forget. Long live Argentina. Long live Spain. And long live freedom, damn it.
Long life. Ole.
Ole, I join in those three cheers. Hugs goodbye, dear. Well, Robert, you should also say long live Argentina because people might start to dislike you, and I don't want that.
Argentina, the only thing I want to say to Argentinians is a message of hope. Since we are going to host the next World Cup, we look forward to seeing you here. We would be absolutely delighted. No.
It will be organized by Mohammed VI and Morocco will win it. And you'll pay for it, that's right. You and I will pay. We're the ones footing the bill, nothing else. Hugs, I follow you on your social media.
One thing I want to say, I hope in the next World Cup we have two countries. One that hasn't participated in the World Cup for 12 years. It seems like a lot, 12 years, but still, Italy hasn't gone 12 years without participating in a World Cup. And hopefully we'll also have Venezuela. It would be a good sign to have Venezuela in a World Cup for sure, hopefully.
Hugs, Robert, I follow you on your social media. Take care, my friend. There he is on YouTube, Roberto Crovu. Look him up and subscribe to his channel. Well, we're going to learn about the biggest genocide that's happening in the world and that nobody talks about in a minute. You're listening to Castillon Confidencial.
The price of gold is reaching historic records. Those pieces of jewelry you no longer wear could solve many of your financial problems, but how can you know where to go? Javier Peno is confidential and has been buying sparkling jewelry, gold, and top watch brands like Cartier from the 80s, 90s, and 2000s for 36 years. And he always offers the highest appraisal. He has 6 stores in Cadiz, and the main one is in Madrid at 7 Arenal Street. Don't get confused. Number 7 brings good luck. On the first floor, right next to Puerta del Sol, they don't close at midday. No one is going to pay you more. If you want to talk to Javier, call him on our behalf at 91 593 0491, 593 0491. Completely trustworthy.
Confidentials, you are sharp people and you don't let yourselves be fooled. But there are still many people in the world who believe that Pedro Sanchez is a defender of human rights. He is the champion of democracy. He is the one who fights for the freedom of the Palestinian people, right? That false image has been built up, like everything about him, in which he tries to give the impression of being the last of the Mohicans, against Donald Trump and the evil oligarchs. The reality is that since he has been in Moncloa, for example, he has intensified his agreements with the government of the People's Republic, China with the Chinese Communist Party, like no other European leader ever did. 19 bilateral agreements, 4 official trips to China in just a few years. It's curious because he never talks about the Tiananmen massacre. Do you remember? June 4th, 1989, this image went around the world. The massacre hasn't been forgotten, but states do look the other way when it comes to doing business. No one knows how many people the Chinese government killed. Some say Amnesty International estimates 2,600. Other NGOs talk about more than 10,000. We're talking about Chinese citizens, most of them students, massacred with army tanks. It seems that neither Sanchez nor other leaders care about that symbol, and yet a genocide is still being carried out in China. Little by little, slowly, for more than 20 years, a genocide to wipe out a social, religious, spiritual group called Falun Gong. We have told you this story before. Falun Gong is a spiritual practice that started in 1992. And they have tried to stigmatize it, to label it as a destructive cult. And from there, once the regime portrays them as the worst of the worst, they are arrested, tortured, and killed. And what's worse, it's estimated that more than 100 million people are persecuted in China. 100 million just for belonging to this spiritual group. Organs are harvested from them. Yes, I'm talking about lungs, livers, hearts, all kinds of organs for that international market where China is also number one. Sandra Flores, director of the Epoch Times. How are you, my friend?
Hello, Albert. I'm delighted to be here again with all your viewers. Thank you so much and greetings.
In other words, a genocide that nobody talks about.
That's right. And it's possibly the most significant genocide since World War II. No doubt, mainly because of the scale, as you rightly said. When the persecution of this spiritual practice began in China, which was on July 20, 1999, there were 10 million people practicing Falun Gong in China. And many of them, in addition, were members of the Chinese Communist Party. Because during the first years, Falun Gong was recommended by the Chinese government because of the enormous health, peace, and workplace productivity benefits it brought. It was really very, very well known. So when the persecution happened overnight, what came next was really very, very, very cruel. And then, because for those 100 million people, first there were mass arrests in stadiums. And then not only were the people who practiced Falun Gong persecuted, but also their relatives and their children were denied access to education, and their relatives were fired from their jobs. Because what they wanted was to corner people so that they would give up practicing Falun Gong. And so that in turn, they would convince others, with those strong arguments, to give it up too, right? So the number of people affected is incalculable.
No, I've already talked to some Chinese people now settled here, and they talk about them as a group of lazy people who didn't want to work, like a cult that destroyed your mind. That is, the Chinese government made sure to instill that in other people's minds. What's really behind this is the big business of organ transplants. What is it? For each person executed in China, and they execute hundreds every year, their organs are traded. But that wasn't enough to supply the Chinese market or the international market. Because you were also telling me that people of Chinese origin are against donating their organs, right?
That's right, Chinese people. Let's remember that Chinese culture is deeply rooted in Eastern spiritual traditions. So they believe that they have to die with their whole body intact, with nothing missing. So culturally, they are very reluctant to donate their organs. And besides, before the persecution of Falun Gong, and even today, there isn't an organ donation system like Spain has, for example. It is organized, it is structured, there is no donation system in China. It didn't exist because culturally there were no donations. And when they started extracting organs from prisoners, which was back in the 80s, there wasn't, as you said, enough to justify setting up the structure. When is it justified to set up the structure? When the persecution of Falun Gong begins. And why is that structure set up? That structure is really for supply. It's about organs. It's not the main purpose of the persecution itself. The purpose of the persecution is the extermination of Falun Gong practitioners. And you might think, well, why such hatred? Well, basically because the practice of Falun Gong, which began to be taught to the general public in 1992, is based on the principles of truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance, and involves 5 exercises. 4 standing exercises, and 1 sitting meditation. What happens is that Falun Gong brings together the ancient Buddhist and Taoist traditions that the Chinese Communist Party crushed. When they came to power in 1949, all communist dictatorships do the same thing. They have a manual. They have to eradicate the culture. They have to uproot people, disconnect them from their roots, because that's where their values are, in order to impose the party's culture. So what happened? Well, what happened was that, as you rightly pointed out, the Tiananmen massacre was a turning point. Why? Because what Tiananmen did was drew the whole world's attention to China. Until then, China did as it pleased, committed all kinds of atrocities, and was dedicated to killing millions of people. The Great Leap Forward, the Cultural Revolution. But it wasn't until Tiananmen that the whole world was truly shaken when they saw those tanks in the streets to suppress student protests. So the Chinese Communist Party had to somehow clean up that image and erase that stain. And what they did was slightly loosen their grip and allowed a little more freedom within China. And within that little bit more freedom, all the traditional spiritual practices began to emerge. Tai Chi, for example, was one of them. Another was Falun Gong. What happened with Falun Gong? Well, what happened with Falun Gong is that it was the first time since 1949 that the Chinese people once again had access to their culture, their roots, their beliefs, and their oldest values. Absolutely.
That the fact
was not very big. No, Falun Gong is still practiced in China, but secretly and in hiding, right? And that's also one of the reasons why it's very difficult to count the victims, because as I told you, the persecution doesn't just extend to the person, but to the person and everyone around them. So when a Falun Gong practitioner is detained, that person doesn't give their name out of fear of reprisals against their family. When their organs are removed and their body is cremated, they vanish without a trace.
A conversation caught on camera comes to mind. We gave it a lot of coverage here, and the media, as always, most of them have forgotten. We haven't. When Xi Jinping and Putin talk about organ transplants and how good it is to have them because it rejuvenates you, do you remember?
Well. Kira, we're listening to you. Humans are living younger and younger and may even become immortal, so that's how it is.
This was the conversation that went around the world and that nobody wanted to ask for explanations about, like you would with two dictators, right? The truth is, as you tell me, Sandra, that Chinese doctors are learning organ transplantation in Spain. I can't believe it. Is that so?
That's right. Chinese transplant doctors are invited to medical conferences. They're invited to training sessions, some of them even sponsored in collaboration with the National Transplant Organization. And let's remember that the first two researchers who uncovered this in 2006, who wrote a book, were David Kilberg, may he rest in peace, Canadian Secretary of State for Asia Pacific, and David Mata, a Canadian human rights lawyer. They met with the current director of the National Transplant Organization and told her about the situation, presented her with their book, and showed her the evidence. They were in Spain and delivered 250,000 signatures from Spaniards who were against this persecution to the Congress of Deputies. It's known at that level. What they say is that, well, China needs to be helped precisely so that it improves, let's say, right? So that it corrects those behaviors. But of course, that logic is very perverse. First, because ever since China joined the World Trade Organization with that premise, let's open the door to see if they become more democratic, the opposite has happened. What we have seen is that what is being imported and what China is exporting are not just cheap products or technologies, they are exporting authoritarian methods. And when you in some way relax your moral standards, things like what happened to Noelia Castillo occur. Because in the end, you see that this moral relativism, like, let's see how you're going to help some Chinese doctors to improve them. Justice comes first. Those who have murdered and put people on the operating table and used the doctor as an executioner, the first thing they need to face is justice. And once we bring justice to the victims, then we can start talking about how we help them to democratize. But what we can't do is look the other way. Look, they've even been invited to the Vatican. At the Vatican, under Pope Francis, there was a Congress, and they invited the leader, the one led by Jian Weifu. They invited him to the Vatican to give a lecture about transplants in China, the success of transplants in China.
My God, we're talking about transplants, even from living people or from people killed to be transplanted. That's what we're talking about. So you don't get misled. I remember that months ago you showed me how Chinese transplant clinics advertise themselves shamelessly and almost price organs by weight, right? For a kidney transplant, liver, lung, or heart. So does that mean anyone with enough money can get a compatible organ by paying in China? Is that right?
Absolutely. And it's even public. I mean, they're not even trying to hide it. There are more than 500 hospitals in China that perform organ transplants, and they advertise it and have their price lists, and they're also public hospitals. Let's remember that this isn't organ trafficking done by mafia networks. No, we're talking about the Chinese government. The Chinese government has established its donation system, and it works like this. Dissidents are sent to prison, and of course, Falun Gong practitioners are people who meditate, do Qigong exercises, don't drink, don't smoke, and have very healthy bodies. So they are detained illegally, of course, and put into labor camps to work for free, producing those Chinese products that we later buy here. And the first thing they do is take a blood sample and a tissue sample, and they put it into a database. And when a compatible buyer appears, they go to those people, put them on an operating table, kill them, take out their organs, sell them for $150,000 or $200,000, and tell the client, don't worry, if your body rejects that organ, we'll get you another one within 24 hours. Look, Doctors Against Forced Organ Harvesting, who have been nominated twice for the Nobel Peace Prize, say so. They say it's impossible. You can't set a date for an organ transplant operation unless you're going to kill the victim to take out the organ.
Sandra Flores, at least here we talk about it, we spread the word, and finding out is the first step to ending it. I hope to achieve it and be able to talk about it soon. A big hug. I follow you on YouTube. The channel name is very simple, right? Sandra Flores.
Sandra Flores-G.
There it is. Super easy. Subscribe. A big kiss. Thank you.
Thank you, Albert, and greetings to all the confidentials.
Friends, thank you very much for the encouragement and strength you give. Thank you, Magda.
I congratulate you wholeheartedly for how well you do it, for the effort you put in, for having survived the monster of the tax office. I also have a bad experience with the tax office. You can only go with a lawyer. And I would dedicate to the PSET, the PSC, and the whole gathered government the song by Paquita del Barrio. The one that says, rat with two legs.
Yes, I love that song. And in your honor, Magda, we dedicate it to you-know-who and his gang, to Pedro Sanchez. And the royalties he doesn't give me. Thank you, Magda. A big kiss. Gentlemen, a very special comment. Fraguas, who is amazing, who is a genius, who is a poet, and who is a big help to us in the online press. Kronos, as you know, is a god from mythology. And he talks about Argentina, the World Cup, and Spain. Listen.
Kronos has a penchant for irony and hasn't missed the chance to comment on the Spain-Argentina final. And he stirred up history. He said, Argentinians, you have a history inherited from Spain and carry their blood, but not their nobility. On Sunday, you learned what a Spanish gentleman is. 26 Spanish gentlemen, exactly. You read that your land was a viceroyalty of Spain. On Sunday, you learned what that means, that you will rule when Spain allows it. Victory was shifted to the other continent because we still didn't have any easy win there. Today, Bikoka means an effortless gain. In that battle, there were thousands of enemy casualties and none for Spain. Does that sound familiar to you? That is a privilege of blood and Iberian descent. The one you rejected and the one you insulted on Sunday. You will have to wait for fate, which someday will return the title to you. And on that day, a Spanish gentleman will forget the offenses, and as a man of honor, he will acknowledge you. Spain has been weak throughout history and small at times, but it never lost its dignity.
Very good, Fraguas. Thank you very much, my friend. Well, there's more, an Argentine soccer meme. I loved it. Antonio sent it to me. You know, they came out with a banner, "Give us back the Malvinas." Well, they say, "Give us back Echenique." I would be delighted they can take him to Argentina and let him stay there for the rest of his life. Freud Lannister. And Enrique sent this one too. Sanchez and Monica Garcia. Don't miss it.
Calishon, shut up already, you cockatoos. Let's wrap this up quickly. I have to leave for vacation, and my tan isn't perfect yet. No one has anything to add, right?
I do, Pedro. I do.
I don't see anyone. Nobody wants to talk.
Pedro over here. Me. Yes, Pedro, me. I want to. Me. Well.
If no one has anything to add, should we wrap up?
But Pedro, I have something to say.
Yes, Monica, what the hell do you want?
Well, you see, Pedro, I was thinking that since people are going on vacation and those fascist, sexist billionaires have won that bull thing, we could take the opportunity to ban some things.
What is this obsession? What things do you want to ban now, Monica?
Well, a lot of things. I want to ban vaping, smoking anywhere, advertising for doctors, and those far-right nicotine pouches.
But, excuse me, dear fellow doctor and mother, hasn't it been shown in other countries like Sweden that those alternative products can help people quit smoking?
Ayuso, buddy.
I think what Cabeza Buque means is that you should shut your mouth. I don't pay you so I can listen to you. You're a pain. Such a pain.
Wow.
Ayuso.
Bad person, fascist.
I don't want to hear opinions. I want to leave once and for all. Look, Monica, Nina. Do you want to forbid things?
Yes, if I want to, yes.
Well, look, if it makes you happy, we'll approve it. Anyway, Congress isn't going to approve any of your crazy ideas or nonsense. And with that said, is there any one of you idiots who wants to bother me with more ideas?
No.
Sure, fine. Everyone wants to leave.
Council of Ministers and blah, blah, blah. Mortadelo, let's go. You need to put tanning Lottie on my back and glutes. And even tan is key.
I can imagine Felix Bolaños putting tanning lotion on that guy's glutes. He'd do it if they asked him. Whatever the boss says goes. Well, gentlemen, another AI-generated image of Zapatero. I've received it from 1,000 places. All he needs is a chimney to destroy evidence, right?
I've been at it for weeks already. And there are more and more every time. In the end, they'll catch me.
He's throwing bills. 500 bills.
That bastard Sanchez doesn't help me.
By the way, thank you so much for continuing to push the Torrelavega City Council in Cantabria to take care of the little dog that's been in a cage in the kitchen for 2 years. They say the local police have gone, that it's not that bad. Look, until the dog stops crying or Chema or someone else takes him away, we won't stop. And I really appreciate the messages, Sofia, well, Juanita, a lot. A lot of people have written, they've sent emails. Thank you very much, and let's keep up the pressure politely, just like us confidentials. At Puerta del Sur, which is a metro station in Madrid, there's a robot that Ignacio recorded for me, and it's really weird. It cleans the platform, look.
Hello, please make room, I'm coming through.
Please make room, and it's cleaning as it goes. Ignacio says, at the rate we're going, how many jobs are we wiping out because of this robot? And how much did the robot cost? And if it breaks down, what happens? Well, I'll leave it there. It's a debate about machines. It really is. And I loved Lieutenant Colonel Castillo's AI. Enriquez sent it.
I'm not corrupt. I'm like most of the government. I also want my piece of the pie. I also like living in luxury.
That's right. Well, and there's one with Lieutenant Colonel Castillo and the Tao of the Civil Guard. There's more. Don't miss it.
Betrayal is my motto. We will not tolerate disloyalty to Malaska. Whoever doesn't betray will pay the consequences. We serve number one.
Betrayal is my motto. They should put this up in these two's office. You know what's worse? They're still in their positions, and they don't resign because they're not allowed to. If it were up to them, they would have already left in shame. But they're not allowed to. They still need their services. You know what I mean? Well, and to finish, something that Amparo sent me. A person wearing a PSOE t-shirt with a big mustache and a sign that says, The PSOE steals from me, but at least the right isn't in power. That's the reason why there are still millions of Spaniards who vote for them. Well, then enjoy what was stolen. Later we'll pick up the pieces, whatever is left of this country. Friends, and thank you for staying with us, for being part of this legion of insiders. Thank you for following every video we put out, and I'll be waiting for you here tomorrow.
You know it and I know it. We're insiders. You're an insider. I'm an insider. Everyone's an insider. Everyone's an insider. But shh, only for open minds. And for people who are wide awake. In the trench, bullets are whizzing, and there's no way to get out there. Here, freedom has wings of wax. Alberca is Albert Castellon, Susana Gach. Your girl is my Castellon. And everyone else, thank you very much. Thank you.
Castellon Confidential by Albert Castellon.